Most leaders believe that the performance of their people depends on the talent, skills, or discipline of the team, but that's only half the truth. The real question we should ask is, what is leadership if not the mirror in which people see themselves? When you lead with clarity, courage, and consistency, your people rise. When you lead with fear, doubt, or ego, they shrink. Leadership is not about authority, it's about influence. It's not about being in charge, it's about taking care of those in your charge. And here's the profound reality. How you lead is exactly how they will perform. If you want people to show up with trust, resilience, and commitment, then you must embody those very qualities first. Because people don't follow instructions, they follow examples. Leadership is often misunderstood as a role defined by authority, rules, or a title, but in reality, it is a living reflection. The way you lead becomes the standard, the culture, and ultimately, the performance of those you lead. A leader is like a mirror, and the team becomes its reflection. This isn't a metaphor to be taken lightly, because when people step into a workplace, a classroom, or even a family environment, they adapt to what they see more than what they are told. If a leader models integrity, respect, and accountability, those qualities ripple through the team and set the tone for how everyone behaves and performs. On the other hand, if a leader is inconsistent, careless, or self-centered, that too will echo in the way people show up, in the quality of their work, and in the trust they place in each other. Leadership is less about commanding action and more about embodying action. Consider a simple example. If a leader consistently shows up late, cutting corners, and treating deadlines as flexible, the team will unconsciously assume that this is acceptable. The culture will shift toward mediocrity, and performance will mirror that attitude. Conversely, a leader who arrives prepared, demonstrates discipline, and respects the time and effort of others sets a silent yet powerful expectation that the team naturally mirrors. This is why the statement, "leadership is a mirror," carries so much weight. It reminds us that leadership is not what you say, it is what you do. People are perceptive, and they don't need speeches to know who you are. They simply observe, and in observing, they imitate. The mirror principle also teaches us that accountability starts at the top. When things go wrong in a team, it's tempting for a leader to point fingers at individuals, but a wise leader recognizes that the reflection in the mirror always points back at them. If morale is low, if performance is weak, if trust is broken, the question a leader must first ask is, what am I projecting? Too often, leaders demand from others what they themselves are not willing to live by. They want commitment without offering clarity, loyalty without giving respect, performance without providing inspiration. But people cannot be expected to rise higher than the standard their leader sets. Another dimension of this mirror effect is the emotional environment. Humans are deeply affected by tone, mood, and energy. A leader who operates from fear, panic, or constant criticism will find that same energy echoed back in the team through anxiety, hesitation, and disengagement. People are often under the impression that leadership is about giving orders, setting rules, and ensuring compliance. But the truth is much simpler and much deeper. People don't follow instructions, they follow examples. A leader may stand in front of their team and outline expectations, but if their actions contradict their words, the instructions lose power. Human beings are wired to imitate behavior more than they are to obey words. This is why children emulate the actions of their parents, why students mimic the demeanor of their teachers, and why employees reflect the habits of their leaders. What is modeled is what is mirrored, and no amount of words can erase the impact of behavior. Imagine a leader telling their team to prioritize honesty and transparency, but then being caught withholding information, manipulating data, or avoiding accountability. the team quickly learns that honesty is a slogan, not a practice. They will internalize the lesson that words are negotiable and integrity is optional. On the other hand, when a leader openly admits mistakes, shares credit generously, and communicates with sincerity, the example becomes the standard. Team members then see honesty not as an abstract value, but as a lived practice they should embody. What you show is always louder than what you say. This principle is especially important in moments of challenge. In times of stress, fear, or uncertainty, instructions can blur, but the example of leadership becomes sharp. If a leader panics under pressure, lashes out, or gives up when obstacles arise, the team is likely to adopt the same response. But if the leader shows composure, resilience, and determination, that presence becomes a stabilizing force that guides the behavior of others. The unspoken message is clear. This is how we face difficulty. People will follow the path their leader walks, not the path their leader points to. It is also worth recognizing that example-driven leadership shapes not only behavior but also belief. A leader who consistently demonstrates trust in their people builds confidence within the team. When employees see that their leader is willing to empower them, to listen to them, and to rely on their judgment, they begin to believe in their own capability. Conversely, a leader who preaches empowerment but micromanages every detail teaches the team that trust is a facade, and as a result, the team stops trusting themselves. In this way, example either builds or destroys belief, and belief is the foundation of performance. Leadership by example does not mean perfection. It means authenticity. People don't need leaders who never make mistakes. They need leaders who show how to handle mistakes. They don't need leaders who preach values without living them. They need leaders who embody values in small, daily actions. A leader's consistency between words and actions creates credibility, and credibility is what inspires people to follow. Ultimately, leadership is less about speeches and more about being watched. Every action, even the smallest, communicates more clearly than any set of instructions ever could. Trust is not something that can be demanded, forced, or purchased. It is something that is earned slowly, consistently, and deliberately over time. Leaders often assume that because they hold a position of authority, trust should automatically be given to them. But real trust doesn't come with a title. It comes with behavior. The truth is, people don't perform at their best when they are ruled by fear or controlled by authority. They perform at their best when they feel safe, valued, and respected. This safety is built not through grand gestures, but through small, repeated acts of consistency. When a leader says one thing and does another, trust erodes. When they shift expectations constantly, play favorites, or react unpredictably, people begin to withhold their full effort because they don't know what to expect. Consistency is what creates reliability, and reliability is the foundation of trust. If a leader is consistent in their words, consistent in their values, and consistent in their treatment of others, people start to believe that they can depend on them. This predictability becomes a source of security, and when people feel secure, they perform with confidence. Consider a workplace where the leader keeps changing priorities week after week. The team spends more energy trying to guess what matters today than actually doing meaningful work. Performance suffers not because the people are incapable, but because the leader is inconsistent. Now picture a leader who sets clear priorities, communicates them openly, and stands by them. The team doesn't waste energy on guessing games. They channel it into producing results. That difference is the power of consistency. Authority may get compliance, but consistency earns commitment. When people only follow because they fear punishment or losing their job, They do the bare minimum required to survive. But when people trust their leader, they go beyond obligation. They bring creativity, dedication, and heart into their work. Trust transforms effort from duty into choice, and that choice is where true performance is born. Consistency also extends to how a leader treats people. If respect is given selectively, only to those who please the leader, the environment quickly becomes toxic. But when respect, recognition, and fairness are extended to all, people understand that the culture is not built on favoritism, but on principle. This steadiness builds unity within the team. Everyone knows where they stand, and that clarity eliminates fear, replacing it with focus. The irony is that many leaders want extraordinary results, but fail to recognize that extraordinary results come from ordinary actions repeated consistently. Saying thank you every time, showing up prepared, honoring promises, keeping standards high. These are not flashy acts, but they are the building blocks of trust. Over time, these consistent behaviors compound, and the trust they generate creates an environment where performance flourishes naturally. Leadership is not a one-time event, it is a daily practice. Trust is not built in a single speech, it is built in every moment of consistency. People will not remember all the instructions you gave them, but they will remember whether they could rely on you. And when they can rely on you, they will give you their best. Culture is not written on the walls of an organization, nor is it found in the slogans or policies leaders create. Culture is lived in the daily behaviors, choices, and attitudes of people, and it always flows from the top. The way a leader treats others, the standards they uphold, and the values they embody shape the environment in which people work. This environment, in turn, dictates performance. A toxic culture drains energy, breeds fear, and limits potential, while a healthy culture fuels trust, inspires creativity, and elevates results. A leader sets the tone not by what they say culture should be, but by what they tolerate and what they encourage. If disrespect, gossip, or mediocrity are overlooked, they become part of the culture. If integrity, collaboration, and excellence are celebrated, they become the norm. People take cues from what leadership rewards and ignores, and those cues build the invisible framework of performance. Culture is not an accident, it is the direct outcome of leadership. Consider a team where mistakes are punished harshly and blame is quickly assigned. In such an environment, people will avoid risks, hide errors, and prioritize self-protection over innovation. Performance will plateau because fear silences potential. Now imagine a team where mistakes are treated as learning opportunities, where leaders model vulnerability by admitting their own errors, and where solutions are prioritized over blame. In this culture, people are more willing to experiment, speak up, and stretch beyond their comfort zone. The leader's attitude toward mistakes defines whether the team stagnates or grows. Culture also determines the level of trust and collaboration within a team. Leaders who encourage competition over cooperation, who pit individuals against each other, or who only celebrate solo achievements unknowingly cultivate an environment of division. In contrast, leaders who highlight team wins, who foster collective responsibility, and who recognize contributions from all sides create a culture of unity. Performance in such a culture is magnified because people aren't working against each other, they're working with each other. The best leaders understand that culture cannot be faked. People quickly see through empty words or posters on the wall. Real culture is revealed in the smallest actions, whether leaders listen attentively, whether they keep their promises, whether they make decisions aligned with stated values. When actions align with words, credibility grows, and that credibility strengthens the culture. But when there is a gap between what is said and what is done, cynicism spreads, and culture decays. What makes culture powerful is that it shapes not only what people do, but how they feel. A positive culture makes people feel valued, respected, and connected. That emotional state becomes a fuel for high performance. People in such cultures bring their best selves to work, not out of fear, but out of pride. On the other hand, a negative culture breeds apathy and disengagement. Even talented individuals underperform when the environment stifles them. The leader holds the responsibility for creating an environment where people can thrive. Ultimately, culture is the silent driver of results. Strategies may shift, tools may evolve, but culture remains the force that determines how far and how well people perform. Leaders who recognize this truth stop asking only about goals and outcomes and start asking, what culture am I creating? Because the culture you create will always define the performance you get. Influence is the true currency of leadership. Authority can compel action, but influence inspires it. Authority is tied to a position, a title, or a role, and it disappears the moment that position changes. Influence, however, is rooted in trust, respect, and credibility, and it remains even when titles fade. Leaders who rely solely on authority may achieve short-term compliance, but leaders who build influence unlock long-term commitment. People may obey authority out of obligation, but they follow influence out of choice, and choice is where genuine performance begins. When a leader tries to control every detail, micromanage every task, and dictate every move, they limit not only their people, but also themselves. Control restricts creativity, stifles initiative, and builds resentment. Influence, on the other hand, opens space for people to think, decide, and contribute meaningfully. A leader who influences through vision and example creates an environment where people feel ownership. They are no longer working just because they have to. They are working because they believe in what they are doing. That belief fuels higher performance than authority ever could. Consider the difference between a manager who says, "Do this because I said so," and a leader who says, "Here's why this matters, and here's the impact it will have." The first may achieve results in the moment, but it rarely creates lasting engagement. The second builds understanding, motivation, and alignment. People want to be part of something bigger than themselves, and influence provides that connection. Authority points to rules, but influence points to meaning. Influence is also measured in how leaders treat people. Authority often creates distance, separating us from them, but influence closes that gap by fostering relationships. A leader who takes time to listen, who values feedback, and who shows genuine care earns the respect that no amount of authority can demand. When people feel seen and heard, they willingly give their best. Performance rises not because of fear of punishment, but because of respect for the leader and the shared mission. The most powerful aspect of influence is that it is self-sustaining. When leaders influence through trust and example, their people begin to influence each other in the same way. It creates a ripple effect where culture and performance are reinforced by everyone, not just the person at the top. Authority requires constant reinforcement, rules, policies, punishments, but influence grows naturally as people model the values they see in their leader. Influence also survives challenges that authority cannot. In moments of crisis, authority might silence dissent, but it cannot inspire resilience. Influence, however, can steady people, give them courage, and unite them around a common purpose. This is why some teams remain strong under pressure while others collapse. It is not authority that sustains them, but the influence of their leader. At the core, leadership is not about controlling outcomes, it is about shaping people. Influence achieves this because it appeals to the heart and mind, not just to obedience. It invites people to choose excellence rather than forcing them into compliance. That choice creates energy, ownership, and creativity that no level of authority could ever replicate. Leaders who understand this stop trying to control everything and start focusing on building influence, because influence, not authority, is what drives real performance. The daily presence of a leader is more powerful than any speech, memo, or instruction. How a leader shows up each day sets the standard for everyone else. If a leader arrives with energy, focus, and discipline, the team mirrors that mindset. If a leader shows up distracted, negative, or unprepared, the team absorbs that energy too. People are constantly watching their leaders, not just in big moments, but in small, ordinary ones. Every habit, every reaction, every choice becomes an unspoken signal about what is acceptable and what is expected. In this way, the leader's daily example silently defines the performance of the group. Consider the importance of consistency. A leader who treats people respectfully only when convenient, or who enforces standards only when it suits them, creates confusion and distrust. The team never knows which version of the leader they will get, but a leader who consistently models professionalism, empathy, and accountability gives their people a stable foundation. This predictability creates confidence, and confidence drives stronger performance. Teams perform best when they know the ground they stand on is steady, and it is the leader's responsibility to provide that steadiness through consistent behavior. Showing up daily also means demonstrating resilience. Challenges are inevitable, but how the leader responds becomes the template for how the team will respond. A leader who crumbles under stress communicates that panic is acceptable. A leader who faces setbacks with calm determination communicates that perseverance is the standard. People rarely remember every word their leaders say in a crisis, but they always remember the posture, tone, and energy they brought. That memory becomes the guide for how the team behaves in future challenges. Leaders also set standards in the smallest details. When a leader pays attention to preparation, honors commitments, and takes ownership of mistakes, they show the team that excellence is non-negotiable. When a leader cuts corners, avoids responsibility, or ignores their own flaws, they signal that mediocrity is tolerated. Over time, these small signals accumulate and shape the culture of performance. The team begins to calibrate not to what is demanded in words, but to what is lived in action. There is also a human element to how leaders show up. People don't only mirror professional habits, they mirror attitudes and emotions. A leader who shows up with genuine encouragement, gratitude, and optimism fosters a team that feels valued and motivated. A leader who is consistently harsh, dismissive, or indifferent fosters disengagement. Emotional energy is contagious, and the leader is the primary source of it. This is why even brief interactions matter. Every smile, every acknowledgement, every tone of voice either uplifts or diminishes performance. Ultimately, leadership is not measured in isolated acts of greatness, but in the daily discipline of presence. The way a leader consistently shows up becomes the unwritten rulebook the team follows. It is not enough to deliver inspiring speeches or set ambitious goals. Those moments matter only if they are supported by daily behavior that aligns with the message. People perform at the level their leader lives, not at the level their leader talks about. Leadership is therefore less about extraordinary events and more about ordinary habits practiced consistently. When leaders understand that their daily presence sets the standard, they stop asking why their team isn't performing and start asking how they themselves are showing up.